Arches, tiers, and spiral staircases. The architecture of Fort Point. The original design of the Golden Gate Bridge called for the demolition of Fort Point. The fort was considered old and obsolete, worthless. Why would we as a nation want to preserve such a place? Joseph Strauss, one of the principal designers of the Golden Gate Bridge, strongly disagreed. He stated that the military function of the fort may have waned, but its historical and architectural significance had not. He asked for funds to ensure its preservation. Strauss even changed the design of the bridge so that its first supporting arch exactly framed the fort. What can we see today that backs up this point of view? Can we see what Joseph Strauss saw? Fort Point is in the shape of an irregular rectangle. The width is 150 feet. The longest sides are 250 feet. The height of the 3 stories is 45 feet. The thickness of the walls averages about 7 feet, heavier at the bottom, lighter at the top. There are 2 bastions, or towers, extending outward about 40 feet from the main walls. One faces the water at the mouth of the bay, the other faces the road that leads up to the fort. The walls and foundations were constructed of granite block. The outside walls and upper tiers are made of bricks, millions of them, with granite reinforcement over the doors, windows, and at the points where the massive side walls come together. The walls enclose a paved courtyard called the parade ground. It is surrounded on 3 sides facing the water with galleries of tiered brick arches. Each tier has a series of gun ports enclosed in casemates or arched rooms. Each casemate has a small window through which the cannon was fired. Above these galleries is a 4th open-air level, the Barbette tier. It runs around all 4 sides of the fort and covers the approaches from both land and sea. Fully armed, the fort was built to have as many as 126 cannons ready to defend San Francisco and the bay. On the land side is the well-protected entrance to the fort, the sally port, consisting of an outer and inner set of doors. The sally port is where you entered the fort today. First, there are 2 heavy doors, studded with large nails, secured at the bottom with a long iron bar. Then you enter a short passageway. In the walls of the passageway, there are a series of small windows called loopholes. These allowed soldiers on the inside of the fort to shoot at any enemy who might force open the outer doors and then be trapped in the passageway. At the other end of the passageway, there is a second set of strong doors. In the days when the fort was an active Army installation, the inner and outer set of doors would not have been opened at the same time. Soldiers leaving the fort would come through the inner doors and crowd into the tiny passageway. Then the inner doors were barred and the outer doors were opened. Coming back to the fort, the procedure was reversed. In that way, the interior of the fort was never left completely open to the outside world. To the right of the inner doors is the fort's tiny jail, a group of 3 prison cells now used as office space. Beyond the prison cells, there were storerooms, now used for the theater and gift shop. To the left of the sally ports are more rooms, including the one in which this video is being shown, that were used as guard rooms and ammunition magazines. On the second floor were the officers' quarters. Each set of officers' quarters was originally subdivided into 2 bedrooms with a parlor in front. The separating partitions of these quarters have since been removed. The enlisted men's quarters, which were much more crowded, were on the 3rd floor. The galleries on the land side of the fort have fluted cast iron columns and elegant wrought iron railings. One of the most dramatic features of Fort Point are the 3 spiral staircases made of solid granite slabs. These lead up to the 3 towers on the top, Barbette tier. One staircase ends in an 8-sided metal lighthouse. The other 2 are capped with wooden enclosures called penthouses. Unlike the metal staircases in 2 of the 4 corners of the building that are open to wind and rain, the spiral staircases were protected from the elements. They are also a very economical use of space inside the crowded fort. The name Barbette refers to the fact that on this tier, the cannons were shot over the walls instead of through openings in the walls, as they were on the lower floors. In French, shooting over the wall was called en barbette. Rainwater caught on the sloping roof was carried by iron pipes to large water cisterns below the fort. This water conservation system still works today. In the early days of the fort, the Barbette tier was covered in grass. Rainwater collected from the top of the building was filtered through the sod of this tier. Construction of a granite seawall surrounding the point that gives the fort its name began in 1862. Work on the wall was plagued by bad weather, high winds, and uncertain congressional funding. The wall was finally completed in 1870. We hope you agree that Fort Point was worth saving for the people who visit it today. Being inside its walls, you can imagine how soldiers lived and worked so many years ago. You can appreciate that this structure was built not just for defensive purposes, but also with an eye towards beauty and grace. If you'd like to know more about living conditions at Fort Point, have a look at the video 3 Hots and a Cot, Food and Living Quarters at Fort Point.